Okay, according to this, I am live. So now all we need to do is wait for the journalist to join in. It seems like we're having some technical difficulties over here. Okay, we officially have one person on. Teen Muffins, how you doing? So for now, we're just waiting for the journalist DJ to join, and let's see. So send a request, view, see if this works out. Fingers crossed, because we're having a bit of issues with my side. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Okay,
Wow.
so I'm just gonna blame you then, because if we could get, if we could get.
I don't know, man. Maybe it's my settings, bro. Maybe it's my settings. But anyway, thank you for inviting me to your page, man.
No, thank you. Look, it's fantastic to be able to discuss these sorts of things. It's one of those where initially I thought I'm maybe not the best qualified, but I'm excited to get into these sorts of conversations because I know a lot more people are actually chatting about this.
Yeah. Look, man. No. You definitely qualified, man. Don't say that about yourself, bro. But you know, how I got to know about you. I attended a screening at the YFM studios. Was it last year or early this year? I think it was late last year. You know the TV show that DJ Sebi and Kuto was on?
Oh yeah, you're talking about the culture.
Yeah. And you were playing, and I'm like, yo, man, this guy can play. Who's this guy? And they're like, Flex, you know? And then after that, I heard you on radio. I'm like, oh, cool, you know? So now, since I'm doing
Wait, that's the thing? Did we do a screening that was open up to everyone?
Sorry?
I didn't realize that was a thing. Did we do a screening on that?
Yeah. No. So, yeah, the TV show, remember when a lot we were having drinks and all that. So and then you were playing afterwards. So
well,
I
look,
thought,
much appreciated. Look, that was one of those things where we were actually trying out a new sound. So we've got guys at the office that for some reason in radio, everyone DJs. It doesn't matter if you are a tech guy, if you are a presenter, it doesn't matter who you are, everyone DJs. So it was one of the marketing guys who said, look, we're going to try something different. And we landed up doing a back-to-back set. So I'm guessing that's what you would have caught there. So it's interesting to see how then it was something that was a little bit different.
yeah, man, and obviously, I'm always, I'm a journalist, so I'm always looking at, people that I can talk to because I believe in documenting the culture, and right now I'm taking it upon myself to just do my bit for the dance culture, house music and all that. So yeah, man, that's why I have you on, I know you're a bit of a versatile DJ, but I just thought that, I should talk to you because yeah, I want to be the first guy to say, yo, man, I'm one of the first people that interviewed Flex the DJ. And yeah, I have it on record. I'm that type of person, you know what I mean? So yeah, man,
Well, you are early to the game. Up until now, I think for the most part, I've always done DJing for myself. I think it's been one of those things where I started out and it wasn't always what the crowd wanted, it was what I wanted. And it means when I started out with sets, they were interesting, let's put it that way. And I think I've just been developing that sound of what I'm looking for, and I'll slowly find the fans that come along for the ride.
Okay, cool. So, but what type of music do you listen to like every day?
Sorry, I just cut out there. So you're saying what type of music?
Do you listen to every day at home?
Sure.
Or in your car?
Every day, I'm one of those guys who I find joy in a lot of forms of music, and I think anyone who's followed me for a while will look and say, well, what is he actually interested in? Because I'll often turn around and I'll comment on a song that's maybe, first off, it'll be an Afro tech song. And then the next day I'll be giving out props to something that's neo soul or the stuff that I'm playing on air or stuff that is really, really diverse. And I think it's important for any DJ that's actually creating music to really diversify their sound, because the problem is if you're going to be an Afro house DJ and you only listen to Afro house, you'll get to a point where that's all you reference. Whereas there's guys who are doing really interesting things in trap. There's guys who are doing amazing things in jazz. If you look at the Afro soul scene at the moment, it's absolutely exploding, where there's all sorts of sounds and creative license that people are using within those genres that we're not looking at within the house scene. And I think that needs to change. One of the things that I think I promote most heavily when it comes to listening to music is just diversify. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I really battle with things like rock or even like your heavy electro stuff. But you can learn from that. They're doing some very interesting things within those genres. So I guess in a very, very roundabout way, I don't have an answer for you because I do listen to so much stuff out there. At the moment, I actually find I'm listening to a lot of jazz. And it's just because I find jazz really creative in the way that the musicians approach music.
Wow, man, you know, that's very interesting because if you're a DJ, you know, the more music you listen to, it's like reading books, and when you're a writer, you know, the more you read, you know, the better you become at your scale of writing. You know, the same with DJing. You can't just listen to, you know, your own, be stuck in your own bubble. So I really relate to that, and I think it's important for DJs to do that. But yeah, man, you know, back to you, just about your journey, man. You know, you learned DJing from at a pioneer school or something like that. I've never heard of that before. Like, what is Pioneer Institute? What is that?
So, I mean, Pioneer, the DJ company that produces all of the equipment and the stuff that if you go to an event, chances are it's going to be Pioneer. So it was one of those where I looked and thought, if I'm going to learn, I may as well learn on the stuff that's out there. And the guys from Pioneer have actually been fantastic. I've worked with them for a while, where they've helped get me more of a theoretical understanding with gigging and stuff like that. So initially, I actually started, I'm trying to think, I must have been about grade 10, I think, when I started with DJing. And I built my own controller because I didn't have money. I was broke. I think I was getting something like 50 Rand pocket money or something. So you can't buy a controller. So I built one out of a computer keyboard, and I've still got it. I think I must actually, it's somewhere around here. I'll pull it out one day and show people how it worked. But that was my introduction to DJing. And I think one of the things that I'd recommend to anyone who's getting into it is, it doesn't matter the means, because unfortunately the barrier to entry is cost. It's very expensive to buy your own equipment. So start with what you can. If you can only do it on a cell phone, then get the basics with that. If you can do it with a laptop, then great. There's a lot of software that's becoming available that's cheap, free, whatever it is, that you can actually get started on. And that's how I began, is I taught myself, and then I slowly upgraded my skills by myself. And then once I had an understanding, I then went and got training so that I could really refine that. And that's where I actually landed up doing my training through the Pioneer Institute. There's a couple of branches. I know there's one in Braamfontein. There's one out in Pretoria. There's one in Sandton. So wherever you are, I really recommend it. But there's a couple of those sorts of schools. So I know Rise Academy is one that people can also check out. They're affiliated to Denon. There's a couple of ways, if people are looking at getting involved within DJing, that you can actually go through and check it out.
Look, bro, I just want to know, man, like, how do you build your own controller? Like, how do you know the technology? How do you, from a keyboard? I'm still blown away by that. Like,
okay, I'll be honest. I'm making it sound a lot more complicated than it actually was. So what I did was I took a computer keyboard. When I say keyboard, I'm not talking about a piano. I'm talking about like an actual computer keyboard. And I would take all the wires that were inside the keyboard, and you just had to find where each one went. And then when you push it, it would do obviously something. So for example, I'd find the K key, and then the J key, and L. And then all you do is you go into your software and you say, if I push K, then it pushes play in the software. And if I push L, then it pauses. And if I push 1, then it slows the track down or speeds it up or whatever. So that was my way of, with no money available, doing something that I could actually start teaching myself, because I found initially doing it with a mouse was just a problem. So yeah, as I say, I think I'll need to haul it out sometime and show everyone how it actually worked.
That's, you know what, I never actually thought of it that way. But you're actually right. You know, if you connect like a virtual DJ to a computer, you can actually use the keyboard as a control. I never thought of it that way. But
so in actual fact, you could do it just with like without changing anything. If you learn what each key does, you could program it in the way. But I didn't want to maybe make the mistakes of pushing the wrong button. So I just took out everything that wasn't needed, and I just put a plastic case on top, and I built it with the keys that were there. It was a bit of a weird way of doing it, but you know what? It worked, and it was my start to actually getting involved with this.
yeah, yeah, I love that story, you know, because you always have to use what you have, what's at your disposal. And I think a lot of kids should do that, you know. Forget the
Yeah.
fancy stuff. Start with what you have or what's accessible to you and just build from there. I remember Heavy K made his first big hit song on a very, very old computer that belonged to his brother, you know, back at home. So, you know, and look at him now. But anyway, speaking about Pioneer, you know, I want to talk to you about, you know, DJs using technology. You know, you might have seen or heard or probably been part of the conversation where people say that, you know, like using the sync button, for example, is cheating. Using software, especially as a house DJ, because you know the computer does all the work for you. You don't have to beat match and all that. So, what is your take on that?
You see, I find this quite interesting. I'm going to say something rather controversial here, because I think the sync button is severely underrated, but people are using it wrong. So I'll explain why I say that. So for the most part, I find a lot of DJs very similar in the fact that they'll get up there, they'll have their 20, 30 songs, whatever it is, and they'll play by beat matching those songs together, and they'll get off stage, and there's not much you can do to differentiate yourself. So between that first play and that last one, all you're doing is song selection. You've obviously got how good you are at beat matching. And then nowadays we're seeing a lot of guys get really creative with effects and stuff like that. And that at its heart is what DJing is. But if you look at the trends that we're going into now, there's a lot more that's being introduced into DJing. And this is the sort of movement that I'm trying to move towards. If you look, Pioneer has just introduced an 8-channel mixer. They've got a 7-channel mixer that was around from Allen and Heath. There's a lot of companies that are introducing more versatility into their mixes because they want you to use additional equipment. So for example, you'll see DJs using drum machines, you'll see DJs using live instruments, you'll see DJs using live vocalists and stuff like that you can sample. So this is where I get back to the whole thing about syncing. I think syncing has its place, because if you're going to turn around and say, right, with this software, or should I say with this equipment, I can do this. But if I add in other elements, I can do more. So for example, if you're adding in a drum kit, if you're adding in a piano, if you're adding in other elements, it means that it's no longer just DJing, it's a live performance. And you see, that's where you're going to have to start using syncing, because sometimes you're not always going to be able to manually sit there and beat match and listen to that super carefully, because you're introducing all of these other elements. So for example, with my setup, if you look here, I've got an analog synthesizer, I've got Ableton and stuff like that. So occasionally, I'll be honest with you, I do sometimes use the sync just because I'd rather focus on getting the live production, rather getting those synths, those drums, those patterns, those things on top, to really start upping the value of what that mix is and making it my own. So that's why I say I don't think that you should do it as a form of laziness. I think if you're going to be doing it, you must still be doing it to challenge yourself by adding in other elements. So always, every DJ should know how to beat match. But if you're going to use it in a way that's strategic, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, makes sense, and very, very well put. Talking about live performances, you play guitar, so do you use that during your live performances? Like, what is a performance for you? What's your normal set? How does your normal set get together?
So there's a lot of different formats of what my set might be. It's one of those things that for the last sort of year and a half, 2 years, I've been experimenting with. My phone's doing its own thing. Sorry, it's typing itself over here. Let me just move this away. For some reason, the stand that I've got, it likes to type at the bottom by myself. So yeah, in terms of my setup, there are occasionally when I'm doing festivals and stuff like that, I enjoy incorporating guitar, and it's a way of making it my own. It's a bit more musical rather than playing other people's music. It is one of those things that most venues won't facilitate something like that. Most venues don't have the space. Most venues won't have the crowd that's even interested in something like that. But it is one of those where I think it's a very interesting form of performance, and it's something that I've been incorporating into. I'll be honest with you. The reason why I started doing guitars, I think I always wanted to be in a band, and I can't sing. So this was my way of being able to play other people's voices and be able to loop the guitar into the sort of music I love. So what I've been doing is I'm starting to play more down-tempo, and then incorporating more musical elements. So I'll put in a keyboard, I'll put in guitar, I'll put in very subtle loops and stuff like that to start actually shaping it. Because there's nothing better if you're listening to a song to be able to turn around and say, I would love for there to be a little bit more intensity in this part, or maybe that you want a certain energy, you want that song to go somewhere. And normally you would have to mix in a song that could bring you that. Whereas with a live performance element, if you feel like it needs a hi-hat right there, then you can put that in. If you feel like it needs a clap to bring up that energy, if you feel like maybe there are different elements that you want to put in. And that's why I think a lot more people are doing this.
There.
I should just hold it.
Yeah, no, you're back. You're back. No, I lost you for a sec. The stuff that you've been saying now about the format of your set. It sounds a lot like a live production. So which brings me to my next point. Like, do you produce music?
Funny enough, not for other people. I very seldom will release my music, and I think because the problem is once you become a releasing artist, people expect certain things from you. So for example, if Black Coffee was to turn around tomorrow and release a trap song, there'd be anarchy in the streets. People would be rioting because this is Black Coffee and how dare he. And for obvious reasons, we've come to enjoy the brand of Black Coffee for a certain sound. But the problem with it is that you then get very typecast into what you're doing. So artists do have different brands. So for example, you've got Euphonic, who also has Timber, and that's because he creates a very different sound with those two brands. But when you release, it forces you to have to sit within a certain genre or theme or mood. And I guess I've never really enjoyed that. So I do occasionally put up stuff, but it really is just to suggest to people that's what I'm working on. It's never really been formalized as this is my new track. This is something I've been wanting to release. If people like it, then I'll send it to them directly. But I guess it's always been one of those things where it's been very selfish in the sense that I do it just for me. I don't know if other people would be interested in some of the random stuff that I work on, so I just keep it to myself.
Look, man, I think music should be shared, bro, even if it's liked by two people. Um, like
Look,
because the music is healing to other people. If you have the gift of making music, I think you should share your music, you know?
mm, I agree with you in that sense. And I think it's maybe one of those things that I need to change my mentality around. But it is one of those things, regardless of your talent base, I'd almost advise any DJ to be able to produce to some level, to a level that pleases them. Because I find just by being able to approach music with a producer's ear, it means that I'm a lot more creative with mixing. So I guess even just to diversify my sound, that's where it comes from.
Mm. Tori wants to know that there's a track that you always play in the background during your show. What is the track?
It depends on the show. So for those of you, for those people that follow me, I do two shows on the weekend. I do the Throwback Riot on Saturday. So there I'll do Jay-Z. I do a lot of stuff from, I'm trying to think who some of the artists that I play as background music. I've got a Childish Gambino track, but I'm guessing the track that she's talking about is from my Sunday show. And that's because I play a lot of lo-fi hip-hop and stuff like that. Unfortunately, the songs that I play in the background are not actually released. I get them from copyright free so that I can play it on the show. But if you're looking for that sort of genre, for anyone who does know my show, because I often get this question, the genre is called lo-fi hip-hop. There's also a trend towards chill step that a lot of people are getting into at the moment. So go check that out. Tori, you're in for a treat. I'll try to find you the exact song, though. I'll send it through to her. I see her handle there.
Yeah, yeah. Lo-fi is dope, man. You know, lo-fi is very dope. I
You
think,
know what, actually, you know what's also worth looking at? You talk about lo-fi. One of the other things that I'm seeing come back, and I'm so happy about because for the longest time it disappeared, is a genre called boom bap. Now, it was actually Zandy on YFM that introduced me to boom bap, and it's a form of hip hop that is really stripped down. I mean, when I say really stripped down, the name comes from the sound of boom being the like 808 kick sound, and bap being the snare. And I'm finding a lot more artists going towards that. And because of that, I think that's also what she's talking about. I've got a boom bap instrumental that I use on my weekend show. So if I could, I'd recommend anyone go check that out.
all right. Look, since we're talking about your show, man, you know, your YFM journey, bro, you know, how did that start?
Look, I got to tell you, I've got to be the luckiest person in the world because it very nearly didn't happen. So I was on campus radio for a long time. I'm talking about 5 years. And after I'd done the breakfast show on campus radio for about 3 years, and I looked and thought that it's just not working. I wasn't getting callbacks from people. I wasn't getting any progress. I wasn't hearing back from managers. And I looked and thought, I need to switch it up. I need to do something different. So I applied for a job in management. And if you're managing the station, you obviously can't be on air because how do you tell people how to do things and yet you're still making mistakes on air? So I put in my resignation from the breakfast show, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done because it was me turning around and saying that I might not be a presenter. I was giving up my dreams to try a different angle. And while I still wanted to be a presenter, I thought maybe I could do it through another route because this way obviously wasn't working. So I put in my resignation and I had 2 weeks left on air. And I'd been doing this for 5 years. I mean, I hadn't heard from anyone. I'd tried everything. I'd done internships. I'd done mentorship programs. I'd shadowed everyone in the industry and no one got back to me. And I had 2 weeks left on air. And the manager, the programs manager from YFM tuned into my show that day randomly. and heard me on air. And I got a call later that day to say, no, would you be interested in coming through? And I mean, I made things socially awkward with how loudly I screamed. It was ridiculous how happy I was. And I tried to be cool. Like in these moments, you feel like you're going to be that guy who's like, yeah, no, I'll come through when it suits me. And that just was not me. I was over the moon, and I was in his office within like 2 hours. And it genuinely changed my life, because it made me realize this is something that was very, very important to me. And it gave me the opportunity to pursue something that I absolutely love. So I'm hoping that I get to do this long term. And to people tuned in, thank you so much for allowing me to do what I love.
Mm. And your radio show, what is the format? I know you spoke a bit about it earlier, but just explain it a bit more.
So initially, when I started out, it was very content heavy. It was a regular sort of discussing what was happening on the weekend. And music, we started to realize that it was a big part of who I was. And more, we started moving towards the sound of what weekends are now, where it's all focused on music. And we look at, I mean, as I say, Saturdays we break down at old school music, which I think people truly enjoy, because it's a way of actually looking back at when you reminisce. And, oh no, we seem to have lost you. Oh no. Okay, well, that's fine. We'll wait till you come back. For now, I'll continue my story. I see a message coming through from Diary of Maddie to say music is definitely healing. It's funny how universal it is. There's so many people who I've chatted to who say that they can put on music in the background and they just feel whole. It doesn't matter who you speak to. It doesn't matter the background. It doesn't matter. Okay, there we go. I see he's requesting once again. So it was a good way of unifying, regardless of age, gender, race. It was a good way of unifying a lot of people. Hey, there we go. You're back. Don't worry.
I don't know what happened. It just kicked me out. I don't know what happened.
You'd had too much fun. It was time to retire.
But yeah,
so
man,
just to explain, I got halfway through. So I was talking about my Saturday show, and then Sunday there's this growing musicality. People are hungry for genuine music. I think for the last couple of years, it's been all about like pop songs, and EDM was big, and trap music was big. But the problem is there's not a lot of substance to that music. As good as it is in a turn-up, it's quite repetitive and it doesn't have much to it. And all of a sudden, markets are showing that people are trending more towards conscious, aware, grounded music. And as I say, musicality, people who are actually seeking out musicians rather than just pop stars. And that's where the Sunday show comes about. Sunday Feels is all about the musicians that actually have a story to tell and a mood behind that. And I think there's some really, really cool stuff being created within that genre.
Wow, man. And, and I was going to ask you also, like, do you think that there's place for real musicians in the space, because everything is so commercialized? And, you just answered my question. So which artists do you think are going to be big? Like, who should we look out for on the come up?
So from the come up, there's obviously guys that are breaking out into the scene. Your people like, I mean, he's been around for years, but people like FKJ who's doing stuff that's a little bit different. Snow Allegra, Elaine, those sorts of individuals that have really strong vocal presence, but a musicality to their sound as well. These are people that are doing something a little bit different. And that's why I say it's really cool to be able to check out some of them. I am a little frustrated, to be quite honest, with the local scene, just because I feel like there is a lot of people, so many hip-hop rappers, so many trap producers and stuff like that, and yet we don't really have all that much in the neo-soul space. So I'm begging and I'm pleading with people who are producing music at the moment to start breaking away, because I must get like probably 10 DMs a week of someone who'll turn around and say, I'm a trap producer, I've just dropped my EP, check this out. But it's very seldom that I get someone within the neo soul space saying, I've just dropped a track, please check this out. So if you are on this and you are listening and you do produce in that scene, get out there. There's definitely a market for it. And especially within South Africa, I'm seeing such a massive outpour of love within that sort of genre of people getting into. But yeah, from the international scene, there's a lot of guys doing some really, really cool stuff. I mean, weirdly enough, even someone as commercialized as Childish Gambino, to get into that space of having really considered lyrics, really focused on the message behind his stuff, is so cool to see, because even though he's popular for things like This Is America, he can still break away and create something like Redbone that is equally as well received, if not arguably better.
Yeah, no, interesting, man. So obviously you must get a lot of DMs from people wanting you to play their songs on radio. And I know it's a difficult question, but yo, man, how do you get your stuff on radio, bro? How do you cheat the system? Tips.
So unfortunately, you can't cheat the system. That's the first thing that I would like to point out. Is radio, whether you like it or not, is actually very efficient with this. Because back in the day, you used to get what's called payola, where an artist would have a shed of money, and they'd come through and they'd say, please play my track. And they'd go up to one of the DJs that's on air, and he would pocket a little bit of that cash, and he'd be able to play the song on air because he had direct access to the CD player at the time. I mean, back in the day, it was a record player, then it became a CD player, then it became a log that you could access and just click the song and play whatever you wanted. Now, that has progressed to a point where you need to be able to regulate that as a radio station. So what they've done is they've gone on to say that there's now a music department, and that's heavily regulated. So as much as I could turn around and say to you that I choose all of my own music, that's actually a blatant lie. Reason being is I am involved within that music process. I have a say, but I'm not the guy who's saying play this, don't play that, because the problem is it opens it up for corruption. People could pay me because I'm obviously visible. They could come to me and say, right, please play my song. So they've got a department that's regulated. They have to justify why they're playing stuff. Now, the thing is, if you're tuning in and you're a producer and you're wondering how to get your stuff played, this is good because it means you're not going up against the big labels and the massive media houses who have way more money than you. You have equally as much buy-in as these big corporates have, purely based on the quality of your songs, because there's people who are actually trained to listen and make sure that they're selecting the right music. So what you do is you'll follow, any station is very open about how you can submit. So for example, YFM is music@yfm.co.za, and you can actually send that through and they'll be able to listen to it, give you feedback and stuff like that. So while presenters might have a say, unfortunately, they're not the ones that are necessarily stacking the music up and pushing the play button themselves, purely because it opens it up to corruption.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I know it's tough for artists to get their song playlisted on radio. And I know, obviously, you know, YFM is one of those stations that everybody wants to be sampled on. But yeah, you know, guys, go to music@yfm.co.za and you'll never know. I was actually talking to DJ Monotone, you know, and he released a song. I think his first big hit, I think 10 years ago. And then he said that back in the day, you had to actually drop like a physical CD copy. And he dropped it at YFM and they randomly played it, you know. So I guess if
there's actually a lot of guys. If you look back in the history books, I know Ricky Rick is one of those guys who ties back to YFM to say they took a chance with him, and I mean it paid off. You look how big he is now. Mikasa still lists YFM as the first people to play their music. So there's actually quite a lot of guys that turn around and point to YFM as their starting line.
Yeah, man. I personally believe that, if it's your time, it's your time, man. If the song really speaks to people, then radio will play it. But I think artists must just take advantage of the internet. And the internet is a space where people are brutally honest. It's very cutthroat. So if your song sucks, if people don't respond well to your song online, then you must know that your song probably doesn't bang. That's just my personal advice.
You know what? I have two things around that. So the one thing is, unfortunately, on the internet, I think people are unreasonably harsh because it's easy to sit behind a screen and say things that are make you appear to be an authority in this sort of thing. So I agree with you. Put it out there, put it on the internet, get feedback and listen to what people say. But at the same time, take it with a pinch of salt, because the problem is there's a lot of artists that we might not have had if they'd listened to comments on the internet. I mean, you look at the Amapiano scene at the moment. You have guys who are completely unregistered. They are independent as it gets. They're releasing from their bedroom studio. No one has heard them before. And they're making these massive hits that are going countrywide. And the problem is, some of those guys, if they'd listened to the feedback early on, would have got roasted alive. But I'm glad that they pushed through. So sometimes I think you do need to take it with a pinch of salt.
Mm. Yeah, man. And what do you think is the future of house music? Because right now we know Amapiano is king, obviously. Looking at the next festive season, if hopefully once the lockdown is over, if you look at the current trends, what do you think is going to happen?
Mm. You see, I have this argument with so many people, and I think why I'm smiling so much is because I'm not entirely certain of where this trend is going to go. There's a couple of genres that I think are going to start developing. So if you look at the Afro tech scene, that's been big for a while, and it's just getting bigger. And I think what's going to happen is it's going to get a lot more electronic. So if you look at guys like Shimza, if you look at guys like, I mentioned them earlier, Temba, even guys like Vitoto, who were producing like really heavily electronic sounds, those got massive. So I think in that sense, from the Afro tech sound, it's going to go a lot more electronic, and that's what we're going to start seeing in December. But if you talk about your December anthems, the stuff that's playing on radio, that's at the Groove, that you're playing on your playlist streaming, I think, and I hate to say it because I fought it at the beginning, I think that Amapiano is here to stay. It has a way of diversifying that I never anticipated at the beginning. So initially when Amapiano came out, it was the same gong, 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 and it had the log drum, and every track had this, and it had the same snare, and it had, like, everything was repeated. But people are starting to realize that that song can be really changed. So some of the guys are going very distorted, very heavy. Some of them are going very chilled, quite jazzy. And I think this diversity is what's allowing the genre to actually live on. The other thing that makes it quite beneficial is it's so chill. So you can, and this was explained to me by someone a while back, where they turned around and said the reason why Gom died was because it was too energetic. If you're going to dance to that at a groove, you're going to be tired. By the first, like, 2 hours, you're finished. Whereas you can dance to an Amapiano set for hours. You're not necessarily voshoing. You're doing little movements the whole time. And I think that's what the appeal of Amapiano was. And I hate to say it because it's going to prove me wrong. Because initially when it came out, I said it was a trend, it's a fad, Amapiano is going to die. I think I'm wrong. I think it's here to stay. It's definitely going to be here this December. And it might even be here next December.
Well, I was listening to, I'm not a big fan of Amapiano myself. I mean, I appreciate Amapiano, but it's not something that I play every day. I enjoy it when I'm out, or when I'm with friends. But the new Gabza,
Mm.
there's just something special about I haven't listened to like the whole project yet because there's so many songs, but I think I pretty much heard like the first part, and I like what he did. You know, he made it very musical. I mean, it's always been musical, but the type of
Mm.
vocalists that he chose to work with, they just made the songs more classical, you know, and it's
That's
music,
the
and you're
thing.
right. Yeah.
Is even Kabza is diversifying. Kabza, who was the Scorpion King, he was. I mean, him and Maporisa were defining that sound initially. If you look like 6 months ago, they were creating that like typical groove sound. Whereas now they're starting to strip back what they're putting into the production and starting to focus on more subtle sounds, more stuff that you can actually listen to on a playlist rather than just that groove. So that's why I say I have serious respect for what the Amapiano guys have done, because they've taken what was one standalone genre and they've turned it into so much more than that, because there's so many versions of it. I mean, if you listen, you can hear a Pretoria Amapiano sound. You can hear even based on like which region of Pretoria. Then you'll get ones where there's guys in like Polokwane that are creating their own sound. There's guys in Limpopo creating their own sound. It's diversifying a hell of a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And I completely agree with you when it comes to Afrotech, man. Even I myself, I'm dropping. I mean, Afrotech is my favorite genre. That's what I
Mm.
play. That's what I listen to every day. And I'm just gonna keep dropping like Afro house, Afrotech songs because that's what I'm drawn to. But anyway, and I agree with you that that is the sound. I think that's the sound. It's not necessarily going to be like commercial because I don't think South Africans really get it. But I think it's going to blow up in a big way. You know what I mean? Like there will be South Africa will export a lot of black coffees. You know, I hate to put it like that.
Mm.
You know, and you know, guys will really make money. You know, but anyway, man. That's you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, this is one of those things that you could discuss for hours on end. I fully agree with you. It is definitely one of those that are growing.
Do you think that there'll be can another? I don't want to say another Black Coffee, but do you think there will be another DJ that will surpass Black Coffee's career, who will make as much money, who will be as successful, you know, when it comes to house music? Or do you think, you know, he's like the pinnacle? Like I don't know, because sometimes I feel like, yeah, you know, there'll be guys that are gonna come after Black Coffee and just, you know, take it to the next level. But looking at what the guy has done, I'm like, yes, you know, those are very big shoes to fill.
They're massive. And the problem is, I reckon the Black Coffee wouldn't be able to fill Black Coffee's shoes if he was to do it all over again. I'm going to say something, once again, rather controversial here. I think Black Coffee is phenomenal. And he's really put the name of South Africa and African dance music as a whole out to the world. But it is one of those where he just struck it at the right place at the right time. And he networked like an absolute champion. He got in front of the right people, and he's now massive in the sense that he's a household name the world over. The problem is, I think what's going to limit people from becoming the next Black Coffee is because there's so many people trying to be the next Black Coffee. So if you're going to try to do it the route that he went, you're going to fail. Because why would we need another Black Coffee when he already exists? And I think there's too many artists that are out there at the moment who are trying to do exactly what he did. So I do hope that there is going to be a lot more artists that are able to follow in his footsteps. But they are going to have to cut away from what he did and start creating their own sound. And once again, just to go back to Amapiano, I feel like that is something that we can say is truly our own, and perhaps we can start seeing that start to make an identity overseas. I mean, when GOM came out, there were clubs in Spain, there were clubs in England that were GOM clubs. There were guys from here who were going across to play there, and admittedly, they didn't get huge. They weren't massive, they weren't internationally recognized. But it was a sound that we were exporting. And perhaps if we start to do that where it is our own sound, we might be able to actually get onto the international stage. But as I say, we're going to have to do it in a way that is truly our own. If you're going to try to be the next Black Coffee, it's done. I think it'll be very hard to actually reinvent a name that he's so heavily entrenched within.
Mm. Yeah, man, and wow, you know, well put, bro. Well put. You know, you're dropping jewels. Lastly, man, what's next for Flex the DJ, bro? You know, what is this year looking like? The rest of the year looking like for you?
So for me, I love festivals, and unfortunately, because of our good friend Rona, that's obviously been limited. So in the long term future, I would love to get into the point where I am a festival DJ and I do a lot more of that, and that's what I'm known for. Just because I feel like people are a lot more accepting with something like that. You go to a club, you expect a very specific thing, whereas festivals, people are open to experimentation. There is a lot going into live streaming at the moment. A lot of people are more willing to actually get into viewing live streams. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting a lot more time into that. I'm going to be getting into a weekly live stream where I start doing live production within my mixes. And it will pretty much be what you see over here. Over there is what the stream is going to look like. I'm going to try and neaten it up a bit and get decent angles and stuff like that. But I think people are a lot more accepting now of live streaming. So I think there's a lot more that can be explored there. And then, yeah, collaborations from my side. I'd like to do a lot more of that, and I think that's where I'm going to be putting my focus in, just because I think it pushes me a lot more as an artist and as a performer. If you actually learn from people and you figure out what makes them tick in their music, it will push me as an artist a lot more. It forces you to change up your playing style if you're playing with someone else. So I'm going to be doing a lot more back-to-backs. I want to be doing a lot more collaborations with production and stuff like that.
Okay, no, cool, man. Sounds exciting, bro. You know, I will be watching. Speaking about collaboration, Styles underscore RSA was asking when are you guys doing a track?
So I'll actually give you a bit of a story. Styles and I met earlier this year, and it landed up being, I mean, I say we met, we only landed up meeting online after we attended a festival together. It was called Lubentube. It was one that I was playing at. And he's turned into one of those guys who's just like a musical genius. He bounces around. I see the stuff that he's playing, and he plays everything from like your house guys into electronic. So you know what, Styles, let's hook it up. I think there's something there. There's definitely a level of experimentation that we both appreciate. We will have to, in the near future, I'll slide into the DMs.
Okay, yo, Styles, man, make it happen, bro. The world needs more music, I feel. Oh yeah, and you know, you say you love playing at festivals. So, last question, bro. Like, what is that one festival that's on your bucket list?
Just because it's so weird, I want to go to Africa Burn. And it's not my kind of people. It's not my kind of vibe. Like, it's one of those things that is just a strange festival. And for that reason, I want to go to that because I feel like it's just different and it's going to open up my eyes. Because the problem is, if you look at all the other festivals, so you've got like in the city, you've got even your ultras and your stuff like that, they tending to all start sounding the same. They all have a bit of hip hop guys. They all have a bit of your Afro tech guys. They've all got a bit of your Afro soul sort of vibes. And then you've got Africa Burn that's just weird and off to the side that's got some other artists. So for that reason, I think that's the festival that I want to go check out. That's the one that really interests me.
Okay, and it's gonna happen, man. It's gonna happen. Yo, man, it's almost 8 o'clock. So you know, I think we've been at it for almost an hour now. Please publish this interview on your page so that I
Yeah,
can,
done.
yeah, so that I can obviously be able to get it from there. For those who don't know, we try to do it on my page, but I don't know what happened.
Technology was fighting us hard. We weren't. We were defeated.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yo, man, thanks for everybody for tuning in. You know, and this platform is to just talk to people that are in the space. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story, man. I think we should do more in the future because I think, you know, there's a lot to talk about. And I like how, you know, you're so heavily invested in the music and obviously your career. So maybe next time, you know, we'll just discuss different topics. But yeah, man, thank you for your time, sir, and good luck with your career, bro.
Let's do it. Look, thank you. First of all, I want to give a quick breakdown. I really, really appreciate the service that you've been doing. I've been following all the interviews that you've been putting out, and you've got some fantastic people that you've been introducing us to. So yeah, from my side, really enjoyed the interview, and thank you to everyone who has joined in tonight and interacted. I'm sorry if we missed some of the comments. We were kind of locked into the conversation that we had, so I might have to go back and actually look through the comments that we did have. But yeah, honestly, journalist, DJ, it's been an absolute pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Peace. Let's shut this thing down. This is where it always gets awkward. I always tap the wrong part of my screen. Here we go, end. Okay, for now, peace.